Welcome to AboutFACE Theatre presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, Austin Pendleton. Austin is an actor, director, writer, and teacher with a career spanning over 60 years. He's an ensemble member of Steppenwolf Theatre Company in Chicago, with whom he has worked on over 20 shows, most recently the Broadway production of The Minutes by Tracy Letts. His other Broadway credits include the original production of Fiddler on the Roof, Choir Boy at Manhattan Theatre Club, and The Diary of Anne Frank with Natalie Portman, while his many off-Broadway credits include his Obie award-winning performance in The Last Sweet Days of Isaac. His extensive work as a director includes a Tony nomination for The Little Foxes with Elizabeth Taylor and his Obie award-winning production of Three Sisters. He has written 3 plays, Orson's Shadow, Uncle Bob, and Booth, all of which are published and much produced, as well as the libretto for the musical A Minister's Wife at Lincoln Center. In addition, he has over 100 screen credits, ranging from recurring roles on TV shows such as Homicide and Oz, to films such as The Muppet Movie and My Cousin Vinny, while he has been teaching acting since 1969. Austin, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
So, Austin, we're so glad to have you here. Our first question is, what play or experience first got you into theater?
Well, it was a 2-pronged thing.
Okay.
First of all, when I was a little kid, there was an annual tour that when I grew up in Warren, Ohio, there was an annual tour of Oklahoma. And we would go up, like when I was 5, 6 years old, to Cleveland every year and see Oklahoma. And we'd all go to evening shows for some reason. And I remember coming back in the car on Route 422 to Warren and looking out and thinking, I want to be on a stage like those people in Oklahoma. So that was one thing. Mm-hmm. The other part of it was that my mom, who had been a professional actress and director before she married my father and settled down in Warren, got involved with a community theater there, which came up after World War II. Mm. And often the rehearsals would take place in our living room in the evening. And my brother Alec and I would sneak down and hide behind the chairs and watch the rehearsals. And it was transfixing. So between that and Oklahoma, those were the things.
Yeah, love it.
And what was your first step into trying to do it professionally?
Oh, I did this play off-Broadway. I got an audition for it called Oh Dad, Poor Dad, Mama's Hung You in the Closet and I'm Feeling So Sad, directed by Jerome Robbins. It was the first time he'd ever directed a play as opposed to a musical, the first time he ever directed off-Broadway. And the only reason I got an audition for that was he had literally seen every young actor in New York, a lot of whom were brilliant, but there was a certain thing he had in mind that he wanted and he couldn't find it. So a friend of mine was, who I knew from being an apprentice at Williamstown, was just simply gossiping with her agent one day. Her agent was Deborah Coleman, and my friend, who the actress by the name of Nancy Donahue, and they were gossiping. And Deborah said to Nancy, I hear Jerry Robbins just can't find who he wants for that boy. And Nancy Donahue said, well, I know someone who could do it. Mm-hmm. So I got an audition because he had seen everybody. Mm-hmm. He'd just seen, you name the young actor, he had seen that actor. And any of them actually would have been extraordinary in the part. But there was a very specific thing he was looking for. So I got an audition for that and he was overwhelmed. I was exactly what he was looking for. And then I kept on blowing the callbacks. I mean, I'd never heard of a callback before. And it was like, a callback is where it's yours to lose. Mm-hmm. And I would get very tense and uptight. And he just kept saying, I'm going to call you back until I begin to see something like that first audition of yours. Mm-hmm. And this was in December. It was going into rehearsal in the middle of January. Mm-hmm. He always couldn't make up his mind until literally hours before the first rehearsal. Mm-hmm. And I went home for Christmas. And the day after Christmas, the agency, the Deborah Coleman agency, a person from the agency called and said, he needs to see you again tomorrow morning. This would have been, I said, I don't want to. It's embarrassing. He just keeps calling me back and I keep not being able to deliver. I think I just want to chill and stay at home here in Warren with my friends, all through January. She said, so let me get this straight. I'm to tell Jerome Robbins that you would rather stay home and chill with your friends in Warren, Ohio in January, rather than come back and audition for him again. I said, all right. Okay. And I got on a plane that night, and the next morning I went in, and there to read with me was Barbara Harris.
Oh, wow.
And it took off.
Hmm.
So that day we both got the part.
Okay.
And even then he had not yet cast the mother. And a few days later he settled on Joe Van Fleet, who was sort of an idol of mine.
Yeah.
I was a freshman in college. I used to go into New York and get standing room time after time to look Homeward Angel, just to watch her performance.
Yeah.
And so there we were. So that was how so it was a series of flukes there. Yeah. If it hadn't been for Barbara Harris, I don't think I ever would have gotten the part.
Yeah. Just having the right scene partner.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, Austin. So next question then is, what's a great play that you love and why?
And want?
And why? Why do you love it?
Oh, why? Oh God, I don't have favorites. I have, like, early on, even when I was an apprentice at Williamstown, I lost a part I really wanted. And I went into such the depths of despair that I said, I'm never going to want a part that much again. And then when I began to direct, I thought, I'm just going to take whatever comes along. I don't have a list. So therefore I don't rank order plays. I mean, I love, and I would never want to direct it because I've seen it perfectly directed by Mr. Kazan. A Streetcar Named Desire. I think that's a marvelous play, a brilliant play, a perfect play. A couple of those, I guess, Death of a Salesman, the ones that everybody likes. Hamlet, I think, is a mess, but it's very talented writing. Let's face it,
that writer's going to go far.
Yeah. He has a way with words. Yeah, but it's a total mess, that play. Oh my God! I've directed with. I had the honor to direct it with Peter Sarsgaard at Essex Stage Company, and it's fascinating. The play is about a misogynist. People, all these scholars keep saying the most sublime intellect in the history of literature. He's a misogynist. Everything he says is distorted through that lens. That has to have been the intention of the play. But he's explicit about it. He treats those two women horribly. He makes no effort to understand either one of them. He humiliates them. And he says, "Frailty, thy name is woman." I mean, come on. It's a kind of an interesting study of that pathology that happens to be 4 hours long. I don't know. I don't quite understand that. But I think it's a very divided, mixed up play. But the King Lear is a really wonderful play. I've directed it once and played the role twice. And wouldn't mind playing it again. That's truly one of those parts. The older you get, the more you get it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh, I see what he's talking about.
Fantastic.
I love it. Okay, so now in your theatrical career,
Yeah.
Can you tell us about a time where something turned out differently than you expected?
That would be literally everything I've ever done. Yeah. There are the things you say, well, this is going to work. This is just going to work. And then the reverse, this is never going to work, but I've committed to do it. I don't know how to get out of it. And then it blossoms. It's such a volatile line of work, either acting or directing or writing, that you just don't know. So you just sort of plow ahead and see what happens. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I am curious just because of what you said before about like you said you took a time, when you kind of didn't get that part that you really wanted, you just decided not to. Have you been able to maintain that of the not
Twice
wanting?
I sort of began to veer in that direction twice. And in both cases, I found out later I came very close to getting the part. But when I lost, and I'll tell you what they were, but then when I didn't get the part in each case, I was slightly disappointed. I wasn't like I was at Williamstown, where I just fell apart. One was the part of Mozart in Amadeus, which I learned I got months after I auditioned. I didn't get a call back or anything, but Sir Peter Hall, he was very sweet after I auditioned, and he said, "You're just too American." But then I learned from the casting director 6 months later in the theater lobby, when we both happened to be seeing some show, that he said, "Do you have any idea how close you came to getting that part?" I said, "No, but it's nice to hear."
Yeah.
So then I was going to go into it. I would have been the second replacement. In other words, the third person to play it on Broadway. And I was being offered the part, but then it was withdrawn for some reason. And so then I finally ended up playing it at the Cleveland Playhouse. And that was a great experience. So that was one part. The other one was the leading role in The Normal Heart by Larry Kramer, which it was down to two of us. And the other guy, who was quite brilliant, Brad Davis, got the part. And then, but I did a very stupid thing about that. I mean, it teetered for like 2 weeks, and finally my agent called and said, they went with Brad Davis, but they're offering you the supporting role of Mickey. And I said, "Oh, I can't possibly do that." Room rehearsing, if I'm not playing that leading part, which I tell my class this all the time, which is idiotic. I went to see the show and I thought, wait, Mickey is a brilliant role. What is your problem? And I could have even asked to be the cover for Brad Davis, who I liked a lot.
Yeah.
And so I could have worked on the part in understudy rehearsals. And possibly when and if Brad decided to leave, I could petition to take over. But even if that didn't happen, I could have, that's one of the dumbest decisions I've ever made, to not take the part of Mickey. Because it's a glorious role. And it's almost as large. It's like, what are you thinking of? So I tell that to my class all the time. I tell them, and I say, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. So those were the two where it came the closest. But even in those two cases, it was just a twinge.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh my God, I can't go on. No.
That's great.
Yeah.
Career
theater,
Austin.
so
New plays,
so you had this
amazing career
Broadway,
in the theater.
Off-Broadway,
You worked in
all sorts of
new plays, classics,
Broadway, Off-Broadway, all
What
sorts
keeps
of
you
places.
coming back to the theater? What moves you? What keeps you coming back to the theater? What moves you? What excites you about theater?
Plays were rehearsed in our living room when I was a kid. It was magic. Also, you get, when you're doing the theater, once you've rehearsed it and put the play up, whether it's just a few performances or a long run, and I've had a few of those, you get to do the whole play. I mean, a movie, you chop it up in little scenes, which are hardly ever even in the order they are in the film. And I mean, I'm very happy acting in movies, you know. And I had great luck in the movies. And the first real part I had in a film was directed by Otto Preminger, and he taught me everything I know about film acting.
Yeah.
And you go back and look at some of his movies, and he really knew how to get work out of people. Often he would use his temper to do that, but he didn't really do that with me. But I mean, like, there's a film. At one point there was a retrospective of him at the Film Forum in New York, and I went to see almost everything. So for some reason they didn't show Skidoo, although Skidoo is the film I made with him, and it's become a cult favorite over the years, almost a fanatical cult favorite. I don't know why. I think it's a terrible movie. And so did Otto think it was a terrible movie. He would say to me, Austin, why do they like this film? Well, I don't know. But some of his films before and after Skidoo are quite remarkable. Like at the Film Forum, there was one he made with Joan Crawford. Now, who doesn't like Joan Crawford? But she's sort of extravagant, you know, in her work. In that movie, which is a movie by the name of Daisy Kenyon, she is so simple. It's the only time that I know of that she was ever, and she, in interviews, would give him credit for that. Yeah, Joan Crawford. It's just her leading man is Henry Fonda, and she's as simple as Henry Fonda in the movie. Yeah. So he was amazing that way. And some, you know, some of the other performances he got were extraordinary too. Yeah. However he went about to get them, you know, they were extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've just talked there a bit, you know, about skills and techniques that that you've learned throughout your career. Is there any, skill or tool from the theater that you've used that you found useful in kind of day-to-day life or a non-theater life?
No. Well, no, except one big thing. I've had 3 major acting teachers, Uta Hagen, and her husband, Herbert Berghoff. Each of those was a teacher of mine. And then after a few years, Herbert asked me to start to teach there. And I've been teaching there now for over 50 years at HB Studio. So, and the third acting teacher I had was Robert Lewis, AKA Bobby Lewis. I was in a thing called the Lincoln Center Training Program. In the fall of 1963, the Lincoln Center was under the direction of Elia Kazan, was going to open with Arthur Miller's play after the fall, which was then a new play. So before that year, from the fall of 1962 to the spring of 1963, there was a thing called the Lincoln Center Training Program, and I got into it. And it was free training, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for 8 months. And I was still in Oh Dad, Poor Dad at this time. Yeah. And so it's kind of exhausting, but and our movement teacher was Anna Sokoloff, who was one of the great choreographers of the time, and who is just an astounding woman, an astounding teacher. I mean, the classes, they were movement classes every morning, but speech teacher was this marvelous guy named Arthur Lesack, and the acting teacher was Bobby Lewis. And for 8 months, we would bring in scenes for him, and he would, he was very gentle and humorous, but he he made his points. But in that program were people like Faye Dunaway and Frank Langella and Barry Primus and all kinds of extraordinary people.
Yeah.
And then we were told at the beginning of the 8 months that half of us would be taken into the company at the end of the whole program. In May, we would be told by Elia Kazan. I got in. I think I enjoyed the whole thing more than most people did, because I really didn't care whether I got into the company or not. I'm just like maybe on top of the work I'd already done with Uta Hagen and Herbert Pogo that I then continued to do after the training program. Yeah. I'm getting this free training for 8 months on this level. I mean, it's like, so that was sort of what it meant to me. And if I get in the company, fine. If I don't, fine. But everybody else, some of the people who were not taken in, one of them was Frank Langella. I mean, there was not a great deal of coherence about what they didn't take in. And that lack of coherence began to prove out when some of the people that were taken, talented people, but it didn't work out, as a result of which Kazan got dropped from Lincoln Center. And the whole thing was kind of a mess. But that 8 months was extraordinary. And one thing that Bobby Lewis said, and here's in answer to your question, his mantra about acting, I mean, a whole lot of other elements, of course, but his mantra was talking and listening. Talking and listening and acting. That's the, if you will, the breathing of acting. That you can be doing the most shattering emotional work and authentic emotional work, you can have this superb grasp of the text and the kind of rhetoric and every play has its own rhetoric, that. But if you're not talking and listening, forget it. So that's the thing you can also take into life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Austin, this has been so fantastic. Thank you so much. As a bonus question, can you tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
What am I working on at the moment? Oh, I was in a play, a Tracy Letts play called The Minutes. And a year and a half ago, we rehearsed it, and then we had 2 weeks of previews. Then we were just about to have the official opening night, and the lockdown happened. The lockdown happened 3 days before the official opening, and we had done all these previews. So now The Minutes is going to resume.
Fantastic.
And it goes into rehearsal in February, and its first preview will be 2 years after the opening night would have been before, March 15th, and then it opens April 7th.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's directed by Anna Shapiro, who's quite something. And Tracy's in it too. It's about a city council meeting. And Tracy plays the mayor.
That's fantastic.
And the first huge amount of it, almost 4/5 of it or something, is expert social satire, kind of, I guess you put it, because the things these people are talking about at the city council meeting are so tiny and local, and I mean, having big arguments about. So it's kind of a social satire. Then abruptly, 20 minutes before the end or something, it turns into practically a Greek tragedy.
Wow.
So it's a very ambitious play, which is good. And it felt like, we of course rehearsed it, but we continued to rehearse all during the previews, and Anna kept reworking sections of it. It wasn't rewritten much at all, but she would keep, during the previews, she kept on rehearsing it to try to get it so that shift of tone would work. And finally she got it, and then the lockdown happened. Yeah. And so we go back into rehearsal with that in February.
Excellent.
Amazing. It's such an exciting production. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
It's worth seeing. I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Austin, so much for joining us.
My pleasure. This was delightful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to you, the audience, for joining us as well. If you enjoyed the interview, please like below and follow AboutFACE and share, because we believe theater makes life better. See you next time on AboutFACE Theater presents 5 Questions With.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, bye.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.